start here with the throttle. This is the main throttle on this locomotive. This is a 3-truck Shay locomotive came from Tuolumne, California, which is kind of southeast of San Francisco. And the Shay locomotive is a little different. In fact, the way it's set up, all gear driven down one side with three engines on the one side. And on the Shay locomotive, they have 2 throttles. Your main throttle here is the one that your engineer would mainly use, which opens the valve in the steam dome, which allows steam to go down through the superheaters and into the cylinders. This valve here, this is another throttle. This is the second throttle. It's called the drifting throttle. And in the logging days, they'd use that while they were going downhill and stuff, down grades. It kept steam and supplied to the cylinders and oil and steam to the cylinders. These valves here, these are both brake valves. This valve here is just your engine brakes and all it controls. This valve here is what they call the train brake valve, and it controls not only the train's brakes but the engine brakes at the same time. So when you're applying this, you're applying all the brakes on the entire train instead of just the engine brakes. This lever here is what they call a Johnson bar, and what it does is it slides the valves one way or the other for the direction of the locomotive. So you throw it back to go backwards, you throw it forward to go forward. This lever has a lot of notches down here, which you use for setting your valves, and it's called hooking it up. And what that does is it changes the cutoff on the valve so that it uses less steam and causes it to be more efficient.
Well, you get a real charge out of operating a locomotive. First and foremost is safety. You don't want to hurt anybody, obviously. You don't want to damage any equipment either, so you need to keep a careful check on your equipment. And also you have the responsibility of maintaining and operating the train in a proper and professional manner. There again, at all times, keeping in mind not hurting anyone or damaging any equipment. But you still want to have fun. It's kind of interesting being able to wave at the little kids after you yourself were a little kid waving at the trains.
Restoring a locomotive is just like a giant jigsaw puzzle. You take something that's got 100 moving wearing parts and basically rebuild them to new again, and that's the kind of the simplest way of putting it. You completely tear it apart into baskets and go with every little piece and start rebuilding until you get everything back into alignment and function again. So it's a very time-consuming and very labor-intensive process.
Yeah, boy, we do it all. We get them in, they can be either semi-operable or completely ratted out, but we'll take them completely apart, down to the frame, and check everything for wear and damage, repair and replace as necessary, to include wheels, axles, spring rigging, brake rigging. We bore the cylinders and lap the valves, and any boiler work or boiler replacement that needs done we do, and rebuild the cab, replumb it, repipe it, sandblast it and paint it, put them back out. We do it all.
The current one that we're working on from Midwest Central is the 2, and she's been around in the past couple of years for the show, and it's just worn out. All the metal parts of it have a lot of wear, so we have to take this one completely down to the frame. Start over again with the frame, get the frame all straightened up, squared up. There's going to have to be a new boiler made for it, which is a unique option that we have with narrow gauge equipment, is you can afford to have new boilers made. A lot of equipment anymore has larger boilers than the standard gauge equipment, and it's just not cost practical to replace the boilers. And we're kind of lucky that we can here. And that essentially they come out to be brand new engines, just like our engine 6, which has been up and running here the past couple of years after a complete rebuild. She's, for all intents and purposes, a new locomotive.
The 6, we just recently rebuilt it. In 1971, it went down with boiler problems, and we consequently had to put a whole new boiler on it, complete rebuild. And it was stripped down to the point where it was just a frame on the tracks. And so we've completely overhauled every single part on that engine and brought it up to what it looks like today. Basically, you can say the only original part on that is the cylinders. Everything else has been rebuilt, replaced, or fixed, and stuff like that. And the 9, like we say, it just got a paint job. And the 16, when we got it mainly just got a quick, it took 11 weeks to do it. It got a quick overhaul and paint job. It wasn't in too bad a shape because it was built in 1951. It's the newest engine that we have. The 6 was built in October of 1891, and the 9 was built in August of 1923.
We try to restore them as close as we can, but there's also a safety factor that has to be put into that. And what I'm talking about is that the number 6 locomotive, for instance, did not have brakes on it except for what they call steep jam brakes on the locomotive, and that was it, which was good back for where they was using it, but it wouldn't work around here too much because there's too many people walking out in front of your thing, you know, along the route. So what we had to do is at least put an air pump on it to make it work. Also, number 6 was a burned wood mostly, and to make it easier for us, it was a lot easier to fit it with an oil tank and burn diesel fuel in it than it was the coal or wood, either one. So there's been some changes from what it was originally.
When we rebuild one now, we're making fuel burners, and the reason for that is if per se there was something that was a failure, we can shut that locomotive off right now. Now if it's a wood or coal burner, that's a matter of getting out, scooping out things, and it's a lot more difficult to deal with an emergency situation. So I feel that the fuel burner is a very safe steam locomotive actually, because you can just shut it down at the turn of a valve and it's off. You know, the boiler's hot for a long time, but